Since the dawn of the modern day pop love song, writers have written about various predicaments between two people, whether it's two fictional people, whether it's the narrator and the person that he or she is addressing, but few writers have written a vignette from the standpoint of a third wheel. In particular, the romantic downsides of being a third wheel when you're in love with one of the two parties. Well, there was Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield, but that was like the third wheel to a happy couple. The song I'm about to play is sung from the point of view of a third wheel who loses everything because the couple break up. The man who he had been best friends with flees the scene entirely, and the woman who the narrator was infatuated with just cannot see him in that way. She sees him as a brother, or as the tune is called, I Love You Like a Brother. It's an early song by Hall Oates that didn't really get released in its own time. It was recorded around the time of Abandoned Luncheonette, left on the cutting room floor for reasons unknown, and was ultimately released around 1977 on the No Goodbyes compilation that Atlantic put out after they went on to see Hall & Oates get big on RCA and regretted it. And so they cashed in by re-releasing She's Gone from Abandoned Luncheonette, the Atlantic release from '73, as a single. And tried to make the most they could of having had the band for a few years before Hall & Oates eventually made it on another label. And so here is the track, the great, little heard but very unique, both lyrically and musically, track by Hall & Oates, I Love You Like a Brother. And there are some vocals. I'm going to have to look for the credits to this track because there's not a lot of info about it online. It was always me, you, and him, whiskey, and gin. We were having fun. When the night was over, you'd go off together, leaving me alone. When the night was over, you'd go off together, leaving me alone. Stayed up every night. I had to find a way. I had to get to you. So he's really longing for this woman. When they're not actually hanging out as three friends, him being the third wheel. When she's away though, it feels like a real distance, like the sign that he has real deep feelings for her. When she's just like, he goes a few days without seeing her or whatever, and it just seems like an eternity, and it seems like a million miles distance. So I told you he was stepping outside. I said when you broke down and cried, why don't you come to me? He was stepping outside the night that you broke down and cried. I said, why don't you come to me? She said, I love you like a brother. That's how it's got to stay. I love you like a brother, and that's how it's going to stay, because I don't need no reminder of the love that went away. That's her point of view. That's her giving him feedback about how she feels about his suggestion that the narrator approaching her and saying, how about you and me, now that the two of you and him are no longer together. The more I desire, the less it does inspire, because she says I remind her of the love she left behind. Ouch. Those vocals right there kind of has sort of like a sentimental, kind of mournful tone to it. Like yeah, the chord progression really drives it home, and yeah, when I was a bit younger, I would be able to hit those high notes and sing along to this in my car a lot. Notice how the slightly funkiness of the musical track. We've got those really thin, kind of fluid guitar licks, and built around some pretty sturdy rhythmic grooves here. It's produced by Arif Mardin. Yeah, and this song is one of the more like Philly styled tracks they did. I guess I was a little bit too late for the first album, and the second album kind of veered between singer-songwriter type tracks like I'm Just a Kid, Don't Make Me Feel Like a Man, and or kind of like piano ballad, almost like cabaret type numbers like Laughing Boy, and then some more complex art rock tracks like the closing epic on the album, or like the kind of jazzier element like the title track. But I guess this was just a bit too pop for the album. I don't know. Great song. It should have it deserved a lot more attention than it got. The first thing I saw when I walked in was my almost lover and my ex-best friend. That line is just so evocative. It's just it puts chills down my spine. First thing that I saw when I walked in, the first thing I saw was my almost lover and my ex-best friend. Yeah. It's... When I walked in the same old place, I found myself in the same old place, in the bar, another lonely night just spent. I found myself in the same old place in the bar, another lonely night I spend. But the first thing I saw when I walked in was my almost lover and my ex-best friend. Okay, first thing I saw when I walked in was my almost lover and my ex-best friend. She was drinking all alone, he was on the telephone, they wouldn't look at me. She was drinking all alone, he was on the telephone, and they wouldn't look at me. This is really... the picture that's painted here is so bleak. I can sense the loneliness that he's feeling. I say this having been the third wheel of a few couples back when I was in my 20s. When I was having a pretty unhappy love life of my own, let's just say. And while I wasn't really infatuated with any of the women in those couples. I do remember some awkward moments, like when, say, they broke up, and each of them re-partnered soon after, and the old kind of friendship unit that the three of us had just no longer existed. And I was just... Yeah, I when they would break up, I would kind of like end up losing two friends, because the chemistry that the three of us kind of had, like the two of them and me as a third wheel, it ended, and maybe I just didn't really get along with the newer partners of each of them, and it just wasn't the same thing. And each of them kind of like wanted my loyalty for a bit, and when they felt like they weren't getting it, they kind of didn't trust me anymore because I didn't want to take sides, you know. Went outside, I wanted to cry, it's a lonely life, ain't what it. Went outside, I wanted to cry, it's a lonely life, ain't what it used to be. Wow, this is really he really conveys a lot of emotional. It's just the bleak picture that's painted here. He manages to convey it in such succinct lines, and once again, I cannot think of many songs that have dealt with this particular topic with love and regret and heartbreak from this sort of angle, from this vantage point. That the third wheel. She said, I love you like a brother. That's how it's got to stay. Because I don't need no reminder of the love that went away. And the more I desire, the less it does inspire. Because she said I remind her of the love she left behind. Yeah, the more I desire, the less it does inspire. I was thinking there was maybe one where he said, the more I perspire, the less it does inspire. I like those harmonies too. The way John Oates is doing those high up, like that I can't really mimic anymore at my age. Yeah, the best song written from the perspective of, you could say a jilted, unhappy, forlorn third wheel who is out cold with nothing in the end when his two best friends who were a romantic item break up, and his infatuation, his unrequited love for the woman in the couple remains unrequited, remains unreciprocated, and he also loses his best male friend in the whole breakup, and that they neither apparently, I don't know. It seems like she kind of wants him, is still inviting him into her life on a brotherly basis, but I guess the guy just doesn't even want to talk to him anymore. It's just really, really bleak, really, yeah. Hall Oates, Love You Like a Brother, recorded in 1973, thereabouts, around the time of Abandoned Luncheonette. Not included on that album or on any album proper. Ultimately released on the No Goodbyes compilation that Atlantic put out in 1977 to capitalize on the then newfound fame that Hall & Oates achieved on their subsequent label, RCA. Yeah, Hall & Oates had 3 albums out on Atlantic between 1972 and 1974. Hall Oates, Abandoned Luncheonette, and War Babies. And after the last of those, they were dropped by Atlantic. 1, because they hadn't really scored a hit, and 2, because the label found them to be too artistically unpredictable. Because like the first Hall & Oates was like very much kind of in the vein of like Gordon Lightfoot, Hall Oates, the album, with a bit of Philly on it. Abandoned Luncheonette was like singer-songwriter mixed with art rock. And War Babies was like a turn towards psychedelic space rock. very much in the vein, very similar to like what Todd Rundgren, who produced the album, was doing around that time, like on A Wizard, a True Star, and the Todd double album, the double album titled Todd, or would kind of be doing in Utopia too. Although Utopia took it to a whole nother level, that first album, but in basically in very much in cahoots with Todd at that point. And so three very different albums. The label didn't really know how to market the band. They found them stylistically unpredictable. And so they signed with RCA and immediately score big with the Silver album and the track Sarah Smile. That becomes a hit. And so Atlantic immediately regrets their choice of having dropped the duo. So they put out this compilation, and then they finally have a hit with Sarah's with She's Gone, which had been on the Atlantic release, Abandoned Luncheonette 3 years earlier, and it had since then been covered by a couple of acts. I think the Tavares covered it. I think a few artists covered it, and the best thing about No Goodbyes, though, is that it included 3 songs that may have just been lost for all time, including this great track, I Love You Like a Brother, and a couple of others. It's Uncanny, and I Want to Know You for a Long Time. Yeah. Anyway, Hall Oates, one of the most musically diverse bands of the 70s. In fact, perhaps the first blue-eyed soul act to really come to the realization that you can be soulful and you can have the vocal arrangements of soul, but you don't necessarily need to be limited musically to the backdrops typically applied to soul music, at least by American producers, or at least the kind of arrangements that American producers would put behind vocal acts. Like, you could actually draw quite liberally from UK and European art rock and mix and match it with elements of American production and arrangements and such, and come up with something very unique, as they would do during the 70s. And for more rubies and sapphires from the catalog of Hall & Oates, see the directory of albums by American art rock and blue-eyed soul acts, linked in the description below. There are the whole entire catalog of Hall & Oates, mined for reds, purples. You can explore at your own leisure. All their albums from 1972 to 1988, and even a couple of more beyond that, as well as Daryl Hall's solo stuff and other similar, like-minded artists from the period, like Todd Rundgren, Steely Dan, and the list goes on and on. Yeah, and like and subscribe, follow me on social media to know when the next video is coming out, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the lyrics to this song or anything that stood out to you. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear travel maximalist, signing off.